That was a Saturday morning in June. I was standing at the kitchen counter with my coffee, watching the weather forecast on the little TV mounted under the cabinet, when a diesel engine roared to life outside. The sound was loud and clunky, like a bull with a head cold, and it had stalled right in front of my house. I peeled back the edge of the blinds and nearly spat coffee across the glass. A giant yellow U-Haul truck sat crooked in my driveway, listing to one side like a tired elephant. Its cargo bay was crammed with mattresses, sofas, cardboard boxes, plastic storage bins, and even a treadmill that looked like it had been manufactured during the Carter administration. The truck's rear end faced my garage door, and two men in sleeveless work vests stood on the lift gate heaving furniture down onto the pavement, sweat flying off them in arcs. Before I could process any of it, Tyler jumped out of the driver's seat. He wore a faded blue t-shirt, jeans, flip-flops, and held an unlit cigarette between his fingers, waving it at the movers while shouting, "Easy, easy. That box has dishes in it. You break M, you buy M." I stared, completely dumbfounded. I wiped my hands on my apron and pushed open the screen door. The California sun was already brutal enough to soften asphalt, and the porch planks were hot enough to burn bare feet. I stood in the shade of the overhang and watched Tyler direct the two men to roll up my garage door. "Tyler," I called out. My voice came out steadier than I expected. "What are you doing?" He turned around and flashed me that big, brilliant grin of his, all white teeth and dimples. "Mom. You're up. Perfect timing, we made it." "We." I looked at him, then at the truck packed like a sardine can, and my brain simply refused to compute. "What do you mean, we made it? What are you moving into my garage?" Tyler tucked the cigarette behind his ear and walked over, clapping a hand on my shoulder with the easy familiarity of someone greeting you at a family barbecue. "Mom, Jessica's parents are moving in today. I told you about this. We're just staging their stuff in your garage until we get the house on Oak Street sorted out." My blood pressure shot through the roof. "Tyler, when exactly did I agree to let them move in?" He blinked, like I'd just said something utterly baffling. Then his brow furrowed, and a note of impatience crept into his voice. "Mom, come on. We talked about this at dinner last week. It's just for a few months." I didn't say yes, I said, enunciating each word. I said, "Let me think about it." "I never got back to you." Tyler's expression shifted. The easy grin faded, replaced by something cooler. He dropped his hand from my shoulder and planted both fists on his hips, tilting his head at me. "Mom, you can't do this. Jessica already gave notice on their place. They have to move today. If you don't let them stay, they've got 6 people sleeping on the street." "6 people?" My throat went dry. "What 6 people? I thought it was just your in-laws." "2 people." "Ah," Tyler waved a hand like he was shooing a fly. "Her brother and his wife are coming too. Plus her 2 sisters. It's a big family, but the house has plenty of rooms. They'd just be sitting empty anyway." I stood on the porch as the June heat washed over my face, and I felt a chill creep up my spine. Footsteps sounded from inside, and Mark appeared in the doorway in his pajamas, hair sticking up every which way, obviously woken by the commotion. He rubbed his eyes, took in the scene, and went still. "Tyler? What's going on?" Tyler spotted Mark like a drowning man spotting a life raft. He rushed over. "Dad. Talk to Mom, will you? This is just temporary. Jessica's family really has nowhere to go. A few months, tops. We'll pay our share of utilities, rent, everything. We're not freeloading." Mark shot me a look. He's the peacemaker type. His greatest talent in life is smoothing things over. He rubbed his face with both hands and said, his voice muffled, Catherine, maybe we let them unload first? The truck's blocking the driveway. The neighbors are going to complain. Tyler seized the opening like a pro, yelling back at the movers, keep going. Keep going. I stood there frozen, watching them haul mattresses and boxes and that whole mountain of random junk into my garage. My garage. The one I'd had the epoxy floor laid in just last month, pristine, gleaming, beautiful. Now it was packed to the rafters with someone else's belongings, not a square foot to spare. Jessica arrived around noon. She pulled up in her Honda Civic with the Hello Kitty sticker on the bumper, got out carrying 2 Starbucks cups, and smiled like a ray of sunshine. Catherine. Thank you so much. My parents have been talking about your kindness all morning. She stepped toward me for a hug. I sidestepped. A flicker of embarrassment crossed her face, but it vanished in an instant. She turned and started directing her mother out of the car. Rose Miller was a short, plump woman with tight little curls, and the moment she stepped onto my driveway she began surveying my house with the appraising eye of a real estate appraiser. Her husband followed, emerging from the back seat with a belly like a beach ball, pausing to catch his breath before nodding at me. Sister, much obliged. Sister, since when was I anyone's sister? I stood there watching this entire extended clan trickle out of the car one by one. Jessica's brother, a lanky guy with tattoos creeping from his neck all the way down to his fingers, slid out next. Then the 2 younger sisters, one with pink hair, one with green, each dragging a rolling suitcase that clattered across the pavement. They congregated on my front lawn like tourists on a field trip, craning their necks, whispering to each other. The pink-haired one pointed at my roof and said, Jess, this house is gorgeous. Way bigger than the photos. I turned and walked back inside. Mark followed me into the kitchen. Just the 2 of us. He leaned against the counter, fidgeting with his fingers, wearing that expression I knew too well, the one that preceded every single request for me to back down. Catherine, he said softly, let them stay a few days. I'll talk to Tyler, get a firm move-out date locked in. I looked at Mark. 15 years. 15 years of this exact pattern. Every time Tyler pulled some new stunt, Mark's answer was always the same, let's just get through this, I'll talk to him later. And later never came. Tyler's entitlement had been fed, bite by bite, by Mark's endless willingness to yield. That's my house, I said. I know. Mark sighed. But they're family. They're not my family. I cut him off. Tyler is your son, I acknowledge that. But Jessica's mother, her father, her brother, her sisters? What do they have to do with me? Mark didn't answer. He stood there in silence for a long moment, then turned and walked out of the kitchen. I heard him in the living room, murmuring to Tyler in low tones I couldn't make out. But I didn't need to hear the words. I knew what he was doing. He was offering another concession on my behalf, playing the good guy at my expense. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. From the guest room came the sound of unfamiliar snoring. Footsteps shuffled up and down the hallway. The bathroom faucet groaned as someone twisted it too hard. I stared at the dark plaster above me, and a single thought churned in my chest. I was 53 years old. I had swallowed too much, tolerated too much, let too much slide. But this time, I was done tolerating. You might think I overreacted. You might think I'm cold. But you don't know what 15 years of, but their family, had done to me. My name is Catherine Morrison. I'm 53, Mark's second wife, Tyler's stepmother. Mark and his first wife split when Tyler was 8, and I came into the picture when Tyler was 11. A scrawny little gap-toothed kid clutching a Game Boy, who looked me up and down and asked, "Can you cook?" I said yes. He said, "Okay then." I raised that boy for 15 years. I went to his high school graduation. I edited his college application essays. I co-signed the loan for his first car. When he was 21 and came home at 3 in the morning dead drunk, carried in by friends, I was the one who put on rubber gloves and scrubbed his vomit out of the carpet. I did everything a biological mother would have done, and plenty of things she wouldn't have been expected to do. But to Tyler, I was always the outsider. When he got married, they held the wedding in Las Vegas. Jessica's family flew in 20-some people, all on Tyler's dime. Mark and I gave them $5,000 as a gift. And at the ceremony, when the MC introduced both sets of parents, he only mentioned Tyler's biological mother's name. Mark and I sat in the audience, invisible. That night back at the hotel, Mark was in the shower, water pounding against tile, and I sat on the bed staring at the neon glow outside the window. I wasn't angry, exactly. Just tired. The kind of tired that seeps into your bones. After Jessica married into the family, things multiplied. She had a gift for words, honey sweet on the surface, but every sentence carried a subtext. Every holiday dinner, she'd manage to casually mention how hard her parents had it, how much her mother struggled, how difficult it was for her brother to find work. Then she'd glance at me, waiting. One Christmas, right in the middle of passing the gravy, she announced to the table, "Catherine, you and Dad have such a big house. For bedrooms, just the two of you. Such a waste of space." Mark was carving the turkey and didn't look up. "We're used to it. Lots of stuff." Jessica smiled and let it drop. But I knew exactly what she was doing. Testing the waters. Then last fall, her mother fell and fractured a vertebra. 2 weeks in the hospital. Jessica called me in tears, saying her mom needed bed rest after discharge, but their old house was on the 3rd floor with no elevator. Could her mom stay with me for 2 weeks, just until she healed? I thought, the poor woman's hurt. Of course I'll help. I said yes. And do you know what happened? The day after Rose arrived, Jessica's brother showed up. To take care of Mom, he said. 2 days later, both sisters came. To help with the rotation, they said. By the 5th night, I came home from work to find 3 sleeping bags spread across my living room floor. The pink-haired and green-haired girls curled up on my sofa watching Netflix, coffee table buried in potato chip crumbs and empty Coke cans. I endured it for 2 full weeks. When Rose left, she clutched my hand, tears in her eyes, and showered me with thanks. I thought that was the end of it. Then at New Year's, Jessica asked if I could loan her brother money for an engagement ring. He'd found a girlfriend, she said, and the girl insisted on a diamond no smaller than a carat. He'd been saving for 6 months and was still short by $4,000. I felt something sour curdle in my stomach. I hesitated, then said I was a little tight on cash myself. Jessica's eyes reddened instantly, her voice rising just enough to carry, "Catherine, I know I'm not your real daughter. I have no right to ask. But my brother is really struggling. If it's inconvenient, just forget it." And then Tyler chimed in from across the room, casual as could be, "Mom, you don't have 4,000? Your rental house on Oak Street brings in over 2 grand a month, doesn't it?" I looked at him and couldn't find a single word to say. In the end, I gave them the money. Because I couldn't bear the weight of those silent accusations. "You're cold, you're selfish, you don't care." Mark smoothed things over. "As always, let's help the kids out. The money transferred. Jessica's reply came as a text, thanks. 4 letters. No emoji, no warmth. I'm not stupid. I could see the pattern as clearly as a road map. They were testing my boundaries 1 inch at a time. Today, $4,000. Tomorrow, 2 weeks in the house. The day after, the whole extended family moving in with moving trucks. And me? Every time, I thought, just let it slide. Don't make waves, every time, I swallowed marks, but their family, refrain. Back up an inch, back up a foot, back up a yard, until I'd backed myself all the way into a corner, and they were pulling a U-Haul into my driveway. I did it to myself. I knew that now. But that night, staring at the ceiling, I said goodbye to the old Catherine, the pushover, the soft touch, the one who always said yes. The next morning at 6:30, the clatter of pots and pans yanked me out of sleep. I shuffled downstairs and found Rose Miller standing at my stove, frying bacon. Grease splattered everywhere. The non-stick pan I'd paid $200 for was being scraped mercilessly with a metal spatula, screaming in protest with every stroke. She turned and beamed at me. Sister. You're up. I made breakfast, come eat. I couldn't speak. She was wearing my apron, the blue and white checked one Mark had given me for my birthday 2 years ago. Bacon grease dotted the front in a constellation of shiny stains, and she seemed utterly unaware. The dining table was covered in plates. Scrambled eggs, fried bacon, toast, even a dish of salsa. Jessica's father sat at the head of my table, watching a baseball replay on his phone, shoveling toast into his mouth while crumbs rained down on the tablecloth. The 2 sisters were camped on the sofa, each glued to her phone, bare feet propped on my coffee table, my oak coffee table, now sporting a fresh ring of water stains. Jessica and her brother stood in the yard smoking, their cigarette smoke drifting back through the screen. Mark sat in the corner of the breakfast nook with a mug of coffee, his face expressionless. When he saw me, he forced a weak smile. Morning. Morning, I couldn't even process the word. I walked into the kitchen and said, as evenly as I could manage, Rose, let me take over. I'm particular about my pans. She waved me off, laughing. Don't be silly. I'm an early riser, can't sit still. You young people sleep in. Breakfast is my treat. Young people, I'm 3 years older than she is. I took a breath and tried again. Rose, that pan can't handle metal utensils. The coating will peel. She looked down at the spatula, blinked, then burst out laughing. Oh, a pan's a pan. It's for cooking, not for looking at. If it gets ruined, you buy another. They're cheap. You buy another, I thought. You're not the one paying for it. I stood there, my molars grinding together so hard I could hear it. Mark saw my expression and quickly pulled me out to the backyard. Catherine, listen. He gripped my shoulders, his face urgent. I talked to Tyler. He said 1 month, 6 weeks max. They're already looking at rentals. Really? I looked into Mark's eyes, those blue, gentle, eternally peacemaking eyes. And in 6 weeks, I asked, if they're still here, what do you do? His lips parted, but no sound came out. I shook off his hands and went back inside. In the living room, Pink Hair was watching a variety show on my iPad, laughing at full volume. The sound of canned laughter bounced off every wall. Green Hair was browsing my bookshelves, pulling out a hardback copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, flipping through a few pages, then shoving it back in, bending the spine. I walked over and took the iPad from Pink Hair's hands. She looked up with a start, still smiling. What's up, Auntie? That's mine, I said. You ask before you use someone else's things. Her smile froze for a second, then twisted into a pout. She muttered, so stingy, and turned back to her phone. In that moment, I felt it with absolute clarity. My house had stopped being my home and become a hotel. And to these people, I was nothing more than the landlady who provided the space, entitled to no say in anything. That afternoon, Tyler showed up. He settled into the living room with his in-laws, talking loud enough for a block party. I heard Rose's father ask him, "When are we moving those boxes from the garage into the house?" "They're in the way where they are." Tyler said, "No rush. We'll move once I get the keys to the Oak Street place." "Keys to the Oak Street place?" I walked in with my water glass. "Tyler, which Oak Street place?" Tyler looked up, that same grin spreading across his face. "The house on Oak, Mom. I've got a locksmith coming this afternoon to change the locks." My hand tightened around the glass. "Who told you you could change the locks?" "Mom." His tone had an edge of irritation now. "The place has been empty for ages. The lock cylinders are probably rusted solid. I'm just making it safe for Jessica's parents to move in." "Move in?" My voice began to shake. "When exactly did I say they could move in?" Tyler stood up. He towered over me by a head. "Mom, we talked about this. Don't flip-flop on me now. All their stuff's here, the whole family's here, and now you're telling me they can't move in? Where are they supposed to go?" Jessica rose too, sliding up beside Tyler and looping her arm through his, her voice as soft as cotton candy. "Auntie, we honestly just need a short time. Once our apartment subleases, we'll be out. Promise." I looked at this young couple, then at the brood on my sofa, all of them staring up at me with expressions ranging from innocent bewilderment to bored impatience to barely concealed smugness. Rose's father fanned himself and muttered, "Hot as blazes in here. Sister, mind cranking the AC?" I turned and walked out. I went to my bedroom, shut the door, locked it. Sat on the edge of the bed, pressed my palms to my face, and shook, not from tears, but from rage. Rage so pure and white-hot I wanted to throw something through the window. But I'm 53. I'm not 20. I knew that breaking things solves nothing. What works is staying calm. Using your brain. I picked up my phone, opened my notes app, and started making a list. The first line I typed slowly, pressing each key with purpose. Asterisk 1714 Oak Street. Owner, Catherine and Morrison. Sole title. No co-owners, asterisk. Then I opened the file folder where I kept my property records, the purchase contract, the deed, the insurance policies. I took photos of every page and saved them to a secure folder on my phone. Then I called a locksmith. "Hello, I'm the owner of 1714 Oak Street. I want to ask, is there a reservation today for a lock change at that address?" The voice on the other end shuffled through records. "Yes, a Mr. Miller booked it for 3 o'clock. Please cancel that," I said, keeping my voice steady. "And I'd like to make a new appointment, tomorrow morning at 9. New locks, keypad with temporary code functionality. And could you post a notice on the front door? I'll text you the wording." I hung up and made a second call, to my neighbor on Oak Street, Martha. Retired nurse, talks too much, but loyal as a bulldog. I gave her the quick version and asked her to keep an eye on the place. If anyone tried to force their way in, call the cops. Martha sucked in air through her teeth. "Catherine, is your stepson really going that far?" "Yes," I said. "Yes, he is." I hung up and sat in my bedroom, gazing out at the lemon tree in the backyard. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, scattering gold across the grass. I knew what was coming. Tyler would blow up. Jessica would sob. Mark would twist himself into knots trying to mediate. The whole extended family would launch a campaign of moral guilt tripping from every possible angle. They'd call me cold, selfish, a terrible stepmother, someone who didn't care about family. But I didn't care anymore. I'd lived in this house for 15 years. 15 years of mortgage payments, property taxes, scrubbing floors, washing windows, every inch of it mine. Nobody had the right to turn it into their personal all-you-can-eat buffet. Not even the boy I'd raised. True to form, Tyler exploded the next morning. He called at 7, his voice ragged with fury. "Mom. The locksmith said you canceled." "What the hell is that about?" I was making coffee in the kitchen, calm as a frozen lake. "Tyler, that house is mine. I decide who changes the locks and when." "Mom. You can't do this. Jessica's parents are supposed to move in today. All their stuff is in your garage." "The stuff's in the garage," I said. "The people can stay in a motel. There's a place on the east side of Fresno, $60 a night. A month would run you about $1,800. There was silence on the line, 5, 6 seconds. Then Jessica's voice screeched in the background, asterisk as she said what? Asterisk. Tyler came back on, his voice tight and low. "Mom, I'm going to say this one more time. You have to give me the keys today. You can't just leave a whole family stranded." "Tyler, let me say this one more time." I enunciated each syllable. "That house is not for rent, not for loan, and not for giveaway. If your in-laws want to live there, fine, they sign a lease. First month, last month, security deposit. $2,400 a month. Credit check, background check. They pay, I give them the keys. $2,400. Are you out of your mind?" "Market rate," I said. "You can check Zillow yourself. Average for Oak Street comparable units is $2,530. I'm giving you the family discount." Tyler shouted something I couldn't make out and hung up. I set the phone down on the counter and took a sip of coffee. It was good. The roast was perfect today. But it wasn't over. 20 minutes later, I heard the front door being pounded like a battering ram. Bam, bam, bam. I opened it. Tyler stood on the porch, red-faced, with Jessica behind him. Jessica's eyes were puffy, she'd clearly been crying, and the moment she saw me, the tears started again. "Auntie, how could you? We already told our parents. What are they supposed to do now? They didn't sleep at all last night." I leaned against the doorframe and let her cry, my face blank. Tyler cut in, "Mom, let's talk inside." "We'll talk here," I said. Tyler bristled, his voice jumping an octave. "You want to make a scene in front of the neighbors? Fine by me. The only one making a scene," I said, "is the man who showed up with a moving truck on his stepmother's driveway without asking, dumped his junk in her garage without permission, and tried to change the locks on her house without a word. Tyler, you tell me, who's embarrassing who?" His face cycled from red to purple. His jaw worked, but no words came out. Jessica sniffled beside him, her voice wobbly. "Auntie, if you don't want all of us, we can squeeze into the smaller rooms, really, we don't mind." "Jessica." I cut her off. "Listen carefully. That house has 4 bedrooms. But it's my asset. I invested, I pay the mortgage, I pay the taxes, I do the maintenance. Have you contributed a single dollar? No. Have any of your family? No. So tell me, Why exactly do you think you're entitled to live there for free? Jessica's face went blank. She looked like she'd never considered the question. In her universe, Auntie Catherine's house was essentially the same as free resources, like the toilet paper in a public restroom. You just grabbed another roll when you ran out. Tyler stepped forward, jabbing his finger so close to my face I could see the dirt under his nail. Catherine. I call you Mom out of respect. Don't push it. I looked at that finger, and the fire in my chest settled into something icy and still. Tyler, I said quietly, point that finger at me again, and I'm calling the police. He yanked his hand back. Jessica switched tactics. The tears stopped. Her face went cold. Catherine, let me be straight with you. We already gave up our apartment. We really have nowhere to go. If you force us onto the street, how will you sleep at night? Street's a stretch, I said. But even if it weren't, that's not my problem. Did you ask me before you gave notice? Did you get a clear yes from me? No. You assumed. You assumed I'd say yes. You assumed I'm a pushover. You assumed there'd be no consequences. You assumed wrong. I stepped backward, one hand on the door. Tyler. Jessica. I'm going to say this once. You have 3 days to remove everything from my garage. After that, I'm having it hauled away as trash, and the disposal fee goes on your tab. The Oak Street house, forget it. New locks, new security cameras. You can't get in. You wouldn't dare. Tyler roared. I looked him straight in the eye. Try me. And I shut the door. I leaned against the wood paneling, listening to Tyler curse outside. Jessica's sobs receded down the walkway, high and thin, like a needle scratching glass. I slid slowly to the floor, clutching my phone, my palms slick with sweat. I'd rehearsed that whole speech last night in bed. Every word, every pause, every inflection, I'd run it through my head until I could say it without stammering, without flinching, without showing a crack. But my heart still hammered so hard I could hear it in my ears. I'd said it. I hadn't backed down. That was just the first step. Over the next 3 days, I learned what a full court press of moral blackmail really looked like. Day 1, Rose Miller knocked on my door, carrying a plate of freshly baked cookies, wearing a "let's be reasonable" smile. I didn't let her in. We talked on the porch. Catherine, she said, I know we've put you out. But think about it, we're a big family, old folks and young ones. Where are we supposed to go? Tyler told us you were on board. We gave up our place because of that. Now you're backing out, you're pushing us into a corner. I looked at the cookies, smelled burnt butter, and said, Rose, before Tyler told you I was on board, did he ask me? Before you gave up your old place, did you call me to confirm? She faltered. Well, Tyler said you'd agreed. He said wrong. I didn't soften it. I never agreed. Not once. He made that up. You got misled by your own son-in-law. I'm sorry that happened to you, but it's not my fault. Rose's mask cracked. The kindly elder face split open, and a cold little laugh slipped out. You rich people. So selfish. All those empty rooms, and you won't share. Karma's going to get you. I smiled back. Karma starts with the person who's in the wrong. You have a good day now. Take the cookies, I'm watching my sugar. The door shut. I left the plate on the step. A squirrel dragged it off later. Day 2, Jessica's brother showed up, the tattooed string bean. He was more direct. He leaned against my doorframe, chin up, glaring down at me. Hey. My sister says you kicked my parents out. I didn't kick anyone out, I said. I just didn't agree to let them move in. You want me to slash your tires? I pulled out my phone. I've got that recorded. Threat of property damage, enough to call the cops. His face went pale. He cursed, spun around, and kicked over my potted geranium on the way out. Terracotta shattered, dirt scattered across the step. I didn't pick it up. I took a picture. Day 3, the grand finale. Tyler showed up with Jessica, pink hair and green hair trailing behind like a flock of angry birds. This time Tyler didn't yell. He'd switched tactics, the wounded puppy approach. He stood at the bottom of the steps, voice artificially soft. Mom. Can we talk? Just the two of us. Talk, I said. He sighed heavily, putting on a pained expression. Mom, I know I messed up. I rushed things. But Jessica's parents have it so hard, her dad has high blood pressure, her mom's knees are shot, their old place doesn't have air conditioning. Summer's brutal. I just wanted to give them a few decent weeks. Is that so wrong? Wanting to give them comfort isn't wrong, I said. But using my things to do it, that's where you went wrong. Tyler's mouth opened, but before he could reply, Jessica burst into tears behind him, loud, theatrical, so loud the neighbors' curtains twitched. Pink hair chimed in, Auntie, how can you be so cruel? My sister's crying her eyes out. I looked at Jessica. The tears were real, I'd give her that, but the corners of her mouth were turned down in that practiced I'm performing for you angle. Jessica, I said, did you know your brother threatened to slash my tires yesterday? Her sobbing stuttered. What? Your brother came to my door. Threatened property damage. And your mother told me I'd get what's coming to me. Your sisters used my tablet without asking. Your whole family, 6 people, spent 3 days in my house and left my kitchen greasy, my coffee table ringed, and my hardback book spine bent. I took photos of all of it. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the pictures, showing each one. You think I'm selfish? Ask yourselves, if I were truly selfish, would I have let you stay here 3 days without charging you a dime in utilities? Tyler's face went pale, then red. Behind him, the family shuffled and stared at their feet, silent. Finally, Tyler ground out through clenched teeth, fine. You win. I'll move the stuff. But remember, from today on, you're not my mother. I looked at him. Something in my chest twinged, a small, quiet ache, but then it settled back into place. Tyler, I said softly, you stopped treating me like a mother the day you pulled that truck into my driveway. You just never said it out loud. He turned and walked away. Jessica tottered after him in her heels clicking frantically. Pink and green followed, shooting dirty looks over their shoulders. 2 cars started up, engines roaring, and disappeared around the corner. I stood on my porch, breathing in the June air. The faint smell of Rose's burnt butter cookies still lingered. I hadn't known a quiet could smell so sweet. But I knew it wasn't over. Tyler never backed down. About 5 days later, I got bad news. Pamela called at noon, her voice lower than usual. Catherine, I need to tell you something. Your stepson broke into the Oak Street house. My grip on the phone tightened. What? Martha called the police. I've just confirmed with the station, around 10 this morning. Tyler showed up with a locksmith and forced the door open at 1714 Oak Street. The security camera caught everything. Police responded, but Tyler claimed he was your son and that you'd given verbal authorization. I gave no such authorization. I know, Pamela said. That's why I'm calling. Let me lay out your options. Option 1. File criminal charges, unlawful entry, California Penal Code 602, up to a year in jail. Option 2. Civil suit, restraining order plus damages. Option 3. We secure the evidence first, then I send a formal cease and desist, and if he tries anything again, we go straight for an arrest warrant. I thought for 3 seconds. Option 3. Send the cease and desist. And Pamela, can I sue him? For the lock replacement, the trespassing, and the storage fees for the garage stuff? Absolutely, Pamela said. It's not a huge payout, but it'll sting. More importantly, a court judgment stays on his credit report. Renting, loans, it'll follow him for years. You sure you want to go that far? I thought about Tyler pointing his finger in my face. About him saying, "You're not my mother." About him bringing a locksmith to force open my door. I'm sure. Sue him. Pamela laughed on the other end. Good. I love these cases, when the other side thinks they're in the right, and the law teaches them otherwise. Over the next 2 weeks, Pamela and I assembled everything. Security footage, photos, certified mail receipts, police reports, Tyler's threatening texts, all of it. Pamela filed the complaint in Fresno County Superior Court. Charges: unlawful entry, property damage, harassment, and unauthorized lock replacement. Defendants: Tyler Miller, Jessica Miller, and Jessica's brother. I'd tacked on the geranium incident for good measure. Simultaneously, Pamela filed for a temporary restraining order. The court granted it. Tyler and his associates were forbidden from approaching 1714 Oak Street or my current residence within 200 yards. The order was served in person by a deputy. According to Pamela, Tyler's face went green when he got it. He'd thought I was bluffing. He'd thought I'd never actually take him to court. Jessica called me multiple times. I ignored everyone. Then she called from a different number, and I picked up by accident. Her voice was tearful. "Auntie, we're sorry, okay? Please drop the suit. Please." I told her, I'll drop it on 3 conditions. 1. A public apology. 2. Full reimbursement for all costs, lock replacement, storage fees, my legal fees, my time. 3. A signed agreement that you'll never approach my properties again without my written consent. Jessica was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, "I'll have Tyler call you," and hung up. Tyler never called. He couldn't swallow his pride. But he couldn't avoid the courthouse either. The trial was in mid-July. Hot enough that even the cicadas had given up. The small courtroom in Fresno County had maybe 20 people. I sat at the plaintiff's table with Pamela beside me, her dark blue suit immaculate, her black-rimmed glasses glinting under the fluorescent lights. Across the aisle, Tyler and Jessica sat at the defendant's table. Tyler hadn't hired a lawyer, probably thought it was just a family matter that didn't require one. He wore a rumpled button-down, hadn't shaved, and carried the expression of a man who couldn't believe he was actually here. Jessica sat next to him, head down, picking at her sleeve. In the gallery, Rose Miller and her husband, pink hair, green hair, Jessica's brother. The whole clan, looking like they'd come to a funeral, faces sour as pickles. Judge Harrison was an older man with silver hair and a face carved from granite. He flipped through the file, looked up at Tyler, and asked, "Mr. Tyler Miller, do you acknowledge that on the morning of July 6th, you entered the property at 1714 Oak Street without the owner's permission?" Tyler stood, cleared his throat. "Your Honor, that's my stepmother's house." I thought she'd said yes. Do you have written authorization? No. Do you have audio or video evidence that she gave verbal consent? Tyler's lips moved soundlessly. No, sir. The judge turned to me. Plaintiff, your statement. Pamela rose, opened her file, and laid out the evidence piece by piece. The purchase contract. The deed. The title insurance. Every document showed the owner as Catherine and Morrison and no one else. Then the security camera stills, Tyler and the locksmith at the door. The police report. The text messages, Tyler's profanity-laced threats. The courtroom was so quiet you could hear the air conditioner humming through the vents. Pamela read the damages. Plaintiff seeks reimbursement for unauthorized lock replacement, $320. Garage storage fees until the date of removal, $480. Attorney's fees, $1,500. Additional compensatory damages for emotional distress, to be determined at the court's discretion. Tyler's face went white, then red. He couldn't help himself, he jumped up and pointed at me. Catherine. Is this really necessary? You don't need the money. The judge banged his gavel. Defendant, mind the court's decorum. I sat there watching Tyler's face contort with rage, and felt nothing but calm. Jessica tugged Tyler's sleeve, then stood up herself. She dabbed at her eyes, her voice a trembling whisper. Your Honor, can I say something? The judge nodded. Jessica sniffled. I know we didn't have paperwork, but we honestly thought Auntie had agreed. She's always helped us before, really. We didn't mean to break in, we just thought, we're family, you know. She dissolved into tears. In the gallery, Rose started crying too. Pink hair and green hair joined in. It was quite the display. Anyone walking in would have thought they were watching a grave injustice unfold. But the judge had seen it all before. He listened with a stone face, looked down at the file, and asked one question. Defendants, did the plaintiff ever provide you with clear written or verbal refusal before you proceeded? Jessica froze. Tyler muttered, not clearly. Yes, I spoke up. I addressed the judge directly. On June 15th, when he first raised the idea, I said, let me think about it and get back to you. On June 18th, when he asked again, I said, I haven't agreed. And on June 20th, the cease and desist letter was already in his hands. All of this has timestamps. Pamela handed over the call records. The courtroom fell silent. The judge studied the documents, closed the folder, and looked up. The court finds, he said, his voice measured, that property ownership is unequivocally established. The plaintiff has sole and exclusive title. The defendants entered the property without written or verifiable oral consent. California Penal Code Section 602 prohibits unauthorized entry onto residential property. Civil trespass is likewise established. He looked at Tyler. Defendant, do you have anything further to add? Tyler stood for a long time, his lips trembling, until finally he choked out, I admit wrongdoing. 3 words, thick and muddled, like he was chewing gravel. The judge nodded. Given that this is a family dispute and the defendant has entered an admission, the court will exercise leniency. The defendant is ordered to pay the plaintiff a total of $2,800 in damages, covering lock replacement, storage fees, legal costs, and a portion of emotional distress compensation. The restraining order is granted for 1 year. During this period, the defendant and all associated parties are prohibited from approaching any property owned by the plaintiff, or the plaintiff's primary residence, within 200 yards. The gavel came down. Crack. Tyler slumped back into his chair. Jessica buried her face in her hands, sobbing, genuine sobs this time. Rose rose from the gallery, pointing at me and shrieking something, until a bailiff warned her to sit. Her husband pulled her back down. I gathered my papers, stood up, and walked out of the courtroom. Outside, the sun was blinding, the heat a wall against my skin. Pamela walked beside me and gave my shoulder a squeeze. "Well done." I smiled. Not a triumphant smile, more like a release of breath I'd been holding for years. The money didn't matter. 2,800, minus legal fees, amounted to pocket change. What I'd really won was his admission. That one grudging sentence, asterisk, "I admit wrongdoing." Asterisk. And from now on, they'd think twice before trying to use the word family as a weapon against me. After the trial, Tyler and Jessica went quiet. The Oak Street house, I had it renovated. New floors, new cabinets, listed it online. 2 weeks later, I leased it to a young couple with 2 kids. The husband worked farm sales, the wife taught preschool. They paid on time. They didn't cause trouble. The boxes in my garage, Tyler had them hauled away before the trial even started. He came while I was out. Mark opened the garage for him. Later Mark told me Tyler didn't say a word the whole time, just loaded everything onto a moving van and drove off. Not even a thanks. Mark was down for a while. He didn't complain, but I knew it stung, watching his son get sued by his wife in open court. Embarrassment was one thing, the deeper bruise was something else. One evening we sat in the backyard under the lemon tree, drinking beer, and Mark finally said, "Catherine, do you think I spoiled him?" I looked up at the moon, thought about it, and said, "We both did. But he's 28 now, not 8. We can't clean up after him forever." Mark took a long pull from his bottle. "Yeah. And Mark, think about it." I turned to face him. If I'd given in, if I'd let Jessica's whole family move in, what comes next? Her brother gets married, does he move in too? Her sisters find husbands, do they bring their families along? Is that house my property or their guest house? Mark was quiet for a while, then laughed, that gentle, warm laugh of his. "You're right. I was being dumb." I leaned against his shoulder. The lemon tree rustled in the breeze. About a month later, Jessica texted me. A long message, 3 paragraphs. She said she'd finally understood that she and Tyler had overstepped, that they'd never really asked, just assumed, and that was wrong. She said they'd moved to Bakersfield. Tyler had found work at a warehouse, and she'd gotten a cashier job at a grocery store. She ended with, "Auntie, I'm sorry." I stared at those 3 words for a long time. Finally, I typed back 4, "Take care of yourselves." Then Tyler's biological mother, Mark's ex-wife, Angela, called me out of the blue. We'd never been close, I'd met her maybe 10 times in 15 years. She was tall, skinny, loud, nothing like me. I braced myself for an earful. Instead, she said, "Catherine, I heard about everything. I'm on your side." I was standing in the grocery store, reaching for soy sauce, and nearly dropped the bottle. "What?" I said, "I'm on your side." Angela's voice boomed through the speaker. I knew that kid would self-destruct one day. It's why I left Mark, his whole family has that entitled streak. Tyler wanted a toy as a kid. Screamed until his dad bought it. Wanted a car? Sulked until his dad co-signed. Now he wants a house? Good grief. I leaned against the shelf, speechless. Angela kept going, "I'm telling you, Catherine, you did the right thing. If he didn't learn this lesson now, He'd have ended up breaking into somebody else's place and going to real prison. You saved his hide. I honestly didn't expect you to say that, I admitted. The line went quiet for a moment. Then Angela's voice softened, unexpectedly, almost gently. I spoiled him too. I left when he was 8. I felt so guilty that I never said no to him after that. Money, favors, whatever. Last year he asked for $3,000 for a business venture. I gave it to him. Next week Jessica had a new handbag. She sighed. Guilt isn't an excuse for enabling. Catherine, we might have been rivals once, but on this, we're allies. I stood in that fluorescent-lit aisle with my shopping cart, and my eyes stung. Thank you, Angela. Don't mention it. Next time I see you, drinks are on me. She was back to her breezy self. Gotta go, dog needs walking. She hung up. I stood there a good minute before I put the soy sauce in my cart and grabbed an extra bottle of oyster sauce for good measure. That night I told Mark about the call. He stared at me open-mouthed. She said that. She did. Mark stirred his pasta for a long time, then mumbled, she never once took my side in 8 years of marriage. She's not taking your side. She's taking the side of right. Mark considered that, nodded, and went back to his dinner. But I saw the corner of his mouth twitch, like he wanted to smile but wasn't sure he should. From Jessica's social media, I caught glimpses of her family's new life. Rose had started a TikTok cooking channel, surprisingly popular, pulling in a few hundred a month in ad revenue. Rose's husband still watched baseball from the couch, but at least it was Jessica's brother's couch now. The brother himself, the one who'd threatened my tires, broke up with his girlfriend. The engagement fell through, deposit lost. Pink hair was studying cosmetology at community college. Green hair worked fast food. Both had moved out and rented their own rooms. As for Jessica and Tyler, they rented a 2-bedroom apartment in Bakersfield. Tight budget, but they made it work. Jessica still posted photos on Instagram, small life, big happiness. In one, Tyler stood at a grill in their little balcony, flipping skewers, while Jessica held up a beer and smiled. I looked at that photo and felt nothing in particular. No hate, no pity, no satisfaction. Just a quiet absence of worry. I didn't have to carry their burdens anymore. It was an odd feeling, empty, but light. Sometimes I caught Mark sneaking a peek at Tyler's Facebook. He didn't tell me, but I saw the browser history. He didn't reach out. Tyler didn't either. 200 miles apart, they kept to themselves. Want to call him? I asked one day. Mark was pruning the roses. His shears paused mid-snip. Want to? Don't know what to say. Try, you free for dinner this weekend? Mark thought. You think he'd come? I don't know. But you won't find out unless you dial. That night, Mark sat in his study for half an hour. I heard his low voice through the door. When he came out, the tight lines around his eyes had loosened. He said he can make it next month. Mark stood in the kitchen doorway, looking as nervous as a teenager asking a girl to prom. I smiled. I'll buy good meat. He loves grilled short ribs. I remember. Mark said and went to the fridge for a beer. I caught him wiping his eye with the back of his hand. I didn't mention it. I just kept chopping vegetables. Now it's June again. A full year since I stood on the porch watching that U-Haul. The Oak Street tenants renewed their lease. They just had their second baby, a little girl named Lucy. They built a swing for the lemon tree in the backyard. Last time I visited, the older boy was swinging back and forth, his mom cooking in the kitchen with the window open, a stew's rich smell drifting out. I stood at the gate for a moment, watching. Sunlight caught the water droplets on the lemon leaves, sparkling. That house smelled like someone else's cooking now. Someone else's laughter. A child's swing creaking against a branch. The way it should be, occupied by who it was meant for, paid for cleanly, everything clear and above board. Back home, Mark was mowing the lawn. The mower hummed. I settled into the rocking chair on the porch, iced tea in hand, and watched the street. A new neighbor had moved in across the way, a chatty older lady with a collection of succulents on her doorstep, pots in every color. Typical Fresno summer. Hot, sure, but the sky was that brilliant rinsed blue, not a single cloud out of place. The mower cut off. Mark walked over, sweaty, t-shirt soaked, and stood at the bottom of the steps looking up at me. His blue eyes were bright in the afternoon light. Any tea left? I pointed to the empty cup beside me. Help yourself. He climbed up, poured himself a glass, and dragged a chair next to mine. We sat side by side, watching the new neighbor water her succulents. The spray hissed. In the distance, an ice cream truck jingled an old, tinny melody. "Catherine," Mark said. "Yeah. Thank you." I turned my head. He wasn't looking at me, he was watching the ice cream truck disappear around the corner, his voice easy and light. "Thank you for standing your ground last year. Thank you for not giving in. For waking me up too." I held my iced tea, condensation beating on the glass, cool against my palm. I opened my mouth to say something, but nothing felt necessary. So I just said, We sat a while longer. The breeze came through, the wind chimes on the porch clinking. My lemon tree was heavy with fruit this year, bright yellow clusters visible over the fence. It was a good life. Clear. Quiet. No confusion about what belonged to whom. I'd learned that lesson at 53, not too late, not too soon. Tyler's coming for dinner next month. I'll make grilled short ribs, the recipe he loved as a kid. If he wants to talk, I'll listen. If he doesn't, we'll just have a quiet meal. But one thing's certain, he'll ring the doorbell before he comes in. That's the rule.